The document lay on the polished desk at Imperial General Headquarters. Order number 1113 redesignated Iwo Jima as Ogasawara Fortress. Outside the windows, cicadas sang in the summer heat, and clerks moved quietly through corridors that smelled of ink and paper. Staff officers bent over maps, their fingers tracing defensive perimeters across a small volcanic island 8 square miles in area. After Saipan fell, planners hoped outer islands could hold for 60 days. The logistics annexes told a different story. No resupply would be possible once American carrier groups closed the sea lanes. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi received his appointment as area commander on this day. His postings in Manchuria and North America had taught him one lesson: massed American firepower could not be met in the open. The island would become a fortress. The men sent there would not return. This was the moment Japan's defensive doctrine changed forever. The memorandum circulated through the operations section at IGHQ with unusual speed. Kuribayashi's name appeared in the assignment column alongside the 109th Division, and within days, engineers began drafting specifications for what would become the most sophisticated defensive system in the Pacific War. The decision to fortify Iwo Jima represented a strategic gamble born of desperation. American submarines prowled the waters between the home islands and the southern approaches. B-29 superfortresses had begun ranging over Japan from bases in the Marianas. Iwo Jima sat directly on their flight path, a natural waypoint that offered both early warning and fighter interception opportunities. Kuribayashi understood the mathematics of modern warfare. He had watched American industry from Washington, D.C., during his tenure as military attaché. He knew the factories in Detroit and Pittsburgh, the shipyards in San Francisco and Norfolk. Japan could not match that production. Every shell, every bullet, every bag of rice shipped to Iwo Jima represented resources stripped from other fronts. The island's garrison would receive supplies for a siege, not a campaign. The general's directive to his officers contained a single revolutionary clause: massed infantry charges were prohibited. Every casualty must extract a price in enemy blood. Defensive engineering would replace offensive spirit. The policy shift horrified traditional officers. Bushido demanded sacrifice, courage in the face of certain death. Kuribayashi countered with arithmetic. A soldier who died in a banzai charge killed perhaps one American before falling. A soldier who fought from a fortified position with overlapping fields of fire and protected withdrawal routes might kill 10 before his position was overrun. The island had no strategic value in itself, only in the time it could purchase, and the casualties it could inflict. IGHQ approved the plan. By mid-July, the first construction units arrived on Iwo Jima's black beaches. The garrison would build a fortress underground. Naval officers accustomed to grand surface fleets now supervised the excavation of tunnels through volcanic rock. Army engineers who had designed conventional bunkers studied the island's unique geology. Mount Suribachi dominated the southern tip, its volcanic cone rising 166 meters above sea level. The central plateau stretched northward, broken by terraces and ridges carved from ancient lava flows. The northern highlands offered the densest concentration of natural caves and the hardest basalt formations. Kuribayashi established his command post near Airfield No. 2, deep beneath the plateau where American naval gunfire could not reach. The island measured roughly 4.5 miles long and 2.5 miles at its widest point. Total area, 8 square miles. Population before the war, approximately 1,000 civilians engaged in sulfur mining and sugar cultivation. By August 1944, the civilians had been evacuated. Only military personnel remained: engineers, infantrymen, artillerymen, communications specialists, and naval construction detachments known as Seabee's counterparts in the Imperial Japanese Navy. Survey teams measured basalt density at 2.9 grams per cubic centimetre, dense enough to defeat medium-caliber shells. Volcanic tuff, softer but still protective, formed natural insulation against blast and fragmentation. Engineers plotted tunnel routes that followed the island's natural fissures. Ventilation shafts disguised as fumaroles vented hot air and exhaust without creating visible targets. Every position received multiple entrances and exits. Lateral tunnels connected strongpoints across hundreds of meters, allowing defenders to withdraw under fire and reoccupy positions after American forces passed. The blueprint specified standardized dimensions: main tunnels wide enough for 2 men to pass, ceiling height sufficient to permit upright movement, reinforced crossbeams at regular intervals to prevent collapse under bombardment. By October 1944, the garrison had excavated approximately 11 miles, 18 kilometers of tunnels. Records listed 1,500 underground chambers serving as barracks, ammunition stores, command posts, aid stations, and fighting positions. Artillery and mortar positions numbered 379, each with steel shutters that could be rolled back to fire and closed to protect the gun crew. Camouflage Manual number 37, distributed to all units, emphasized a single principle: expose nothing to the enemy's eyes, fight underground. The defensive plan divided the island into sectors. Mount Suribachi constituted the southern sector, manned by approximately 2,000 troops with heavy machine guns, mortars, and interlocking fields of fire covering the landing beaches. The central plateau, Airfield Nospirus 1 and 2, held the main defensive belt with the highest concentration of artillery, anti-tank guns, and Kuribayashi's command complex. The northern highlands became the final redoubt, a labyrinth of natural caves reinforced with concrete and steel. If the Americans breached the southern and central defences, the northern sector would continue fighting indefinitely. American aerial reconnaissance photographed the island throughout late 1944. Intelligence analysts noted no significant targets. Gun positions remained hidden until the moment of firing. Troop concentrations stayed underground during daylight hours. The island appeared almost deserted, a barren volcanic rock of minimal strategic importance. Japanese engineers read the reconnaissance reports with satisfaction. The stillness was not weakness, it was proof of readiness. Supplies accumulated in underground storerooms throughout the autumn. Quartermasters inventoried crates stacked floor to ceiling in chambers carved from solid rock, 13,000 tons of food and materiel, 18,000 tons of ammunition, 2,000 tons of water in steel drums. The food consisted primarily of rice, canned fish, dried vegetables, and hardtack, rations calculated to sustain 21,000 men for approximately 6 months under siege conditions. Ammunition stocks reflected the garrison's defensive mission: artillery shells, mortar rounds, rifle cartridges, grenades, and demolition charges. Water represented the most critical resource. The island's natural sources were minimal, and American bombardment would likely destroy surface systems. Communications infrastructure linked every major position. Field telephone lines ran through conduits protected by multiple feet of rock. Approximately 400 positions maintained direct contact with sector commanders, who reported to Kuribayashi's central switchboard. The system permitted coordinated fires across the entire island, allowing artillery observers to call strikes from guns positioned kilometers away. Redundant lines ensured continuity even if individual cables were severed. Radio sets provided backup communication, though their use would be limited to avoid American direction finding. The garrison's order of battle reflected its isolation. The 109th Division formed the core infantry force, reinforced by the 2nd Mixed Brigade and naval troops. Colonel Takechi Nishi commanded the 26th Tank Regiment, which included approximately 23 Type 97 Chiha medium tanks. These vehicles, obsolete by 1945 standards, carried 57mm main guns and thin armour vulnerable to American tank destroyers. Kuribayashi ordered them emplaced as fixed pillboxes, their mobility sacrificed for protection. Buried hull deep with only their turrets exposed, they became steel casemates with interlocking fields of fire. Artillery units deployed Type 1 47mm anti-tank guns, 75mm mountain guns, 120mm coastal defence guns, and 150mm howitzers. The heaviest pieces occupied positions on the northern highlands, their range covering the entire island. Lighter weapons clustered around the airfields and beaches. Every gun received pre-plotted firing coordinates for likely American approach routes. Crews rehearsed their procedures until they could service their weapons in darkness under fire with minimal exposure. IGHQ's final directive arrived in January 1945. We shall fight without expecting air or sea support. The naval blockade had tightened. American submarines sank supply convoys before they reached the Bonin Islands. Carrier aircraft swept Japanese reconnaissance planes from the sky. The garrison was alone. Kuribayashi assembled his officers and read the order aloud. No one spoke. They understood. Iwo Jima was a terminal post. No rotation, no evacuation, no reinforcement. The island would be defended until every man was dead or captured. In the silence that followed, the general added a personal note. Every day of resistance purchased time for the home islands. Every American casualty might delay the inevitable invasion of Japan. This was their mission. This was their duty. Spotter binoculars swept the horizon on the morning of 19th of February 1945. American warships materialized from the dawn haze. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and transports arranged in geometric precision across miles of ocean. Task Force 58 comprised approximately 482 vessels, the largest amphibious fleet yet assembled in the Pacific. Aboard the transports, Marines checked equipment and ate breakfast. On the command ships, staff officers synchronized watches and reviewed landing tables. H-hour was set for 0900. Naval gunfire would commence at 0700. Carrier aircraft would strike immediately after. Then the landing craft would hit the beaches. Japanese observers counted the ships and calculated trajectories. Forward posts telephoned coordinates to fire direction centers buried beneath the plateau. Artillery crews stood ready at their pieces, ammunition stacked within arm's reach. Kuribayashi's order was explicit. Hold fire until 1,000 hours. Let the Americans land. Let them crowd onto the narrow beaches. Let them believe the bombardment had destroyed the defenses. Then strike with every gun simultaneously. The naval bombardment began precisely on schedule. 16-inch shells from battleships USS Nevada, USS Tennessee, and USS Idaho arced across miles of ocean and detonated on Iwo Jima's black sand. Cruisers added 8-inch and 6-inch fire. Destroyers closed to point-blank range and pumped 5-inch shells into suspected positions. The island disappeared beneath smoke and dust. Carrier aircraft, Hellcats, Avengers, Corsairs, roared overhead and dropped bombs, napalm, and rockets. For 2 hours, American firepower transformed the landscape. Officers aboard the command ship studied the results through telescopes. Nothing moved, no return fire. The island appeared lifeless. Landing craft churned toward the beaches at 0859. First wave, 8 battalions of Marines, approximately 9,000 men in the initial assault. LVTs and Higgins boats grounded on the southeastern beaches below Mount Suribachi and the terraces leading to Airfield No. 1. Men scrambled out, weapons ready, and found volcanic ash that gave way underfoot. Climbing the terraces required effort. Every step sank inches into loose cinder. Equipment bogged down. Vehicles struggled for traction. By 0945, the beaches were crowded with men, machines, and materiel. At 1,000 hours, Japanese artillery opened fire. Approximately 1,200 tubes, howitzers, mortars, rockets, and anti-tank guns fired simultaneously. Observers had registered every meter of the beach. Shells detonated in perfect airbursts above marine formations. Mortars dropped into landing craft still approaching shore. Rockets streaked from hidden launchers on Mount Suribachi and the central ridges. The effect was catastrophic. Marines dove for cover, but the volcanic ash offered no protection. Casualties mounted within minutes. Corpsmen worked frantically. Officers shouted orders that couldn't be heard over the explosions. The withheld fire had achieved its purpose. Maximum American density, maximum Japanese effect. By nightfall, U.S. casualties exceeded 2,120 killed, wounded, and missing, the highest single-day loss in Marine Corps history to that date. The Marines held a beachhead approximately 1,000 yards deep and 4,500 yards wide. They had captured none of their D-Day objectives. Iwo Jima's defenders had revealed the cost of every yard. The battle that planners expected to last 5 days would continue for 36. Engineers chalked detonation symbols on pillbox embrasures the next morning. M2A17 flamethrowers tested streams of burning fuel into slit trenches, while Sherman tanks fitted with flame projectors, POA CWS H1 models, idled behind sand berms. The Marines adapted quickly, Frontal assault against fortified positions invited annihilation. The new doctrine emphasized combined arms, tanks, flamethrowers, demolitions, and covering fire coordinated against individual strongpoints, advance by yards, not miles, clear by aperture, not by sector. American intelligence expected collapse once Airfield No. 1 fell. The opposite occurred. Japanese defenders disappeared during the day, then reappeared at night through tunnels bypassed by advancing Marines. Positions declared secure at dusk erupted with fire at midnight. Infiltrators struck rear area command posts, supply dumps, and artillery positions. Marines assigned to hold captured ground found themselves fighting in all directions. The island's tunnel system permitted defenders to flow like water, attacking from unexpected angles and vanishing before reinforcements arrived. Japanese company logs and captured diaries revealed the system's sophistication. Each bunker possessed 3 to 4 exits. Lateral tunnels connected positions across hundreds of meters. Defenders could withdraw through one exit while reinforcements entered through another. Reverse slope firing positions allowed guns to engage from behind ridgelines, protected from direct observation. Mouse-holing, blasting through interior walls to move between buildings, extended the principle to surface structures. American forces captured positions only to discover they controlled nothing except the ground they physically occupied. Flame and demolition became the only reliable method of neutralization. A typical sequence began with tank fire to suppress apertures. Infantry then approached under covering fire, carrying satchel charges, canvas bags filled with composition explosives. A Marine would dash forward, place the charge against a bunker entrance, pull the fuse, and sprint back. The explosion collapsed the entrance, sealing the defenders inside. Flamethrowers followed, pumping burning fuel through ventilation shafts and firing slits. Record logs note approximately 7 flamethrower bursts required per yard of advance in heavily defended sectors. Medical reports documented the underground combat's unique hazards. Carbon monoxide. Poisoning killed defenders sheltering in sealed chambers. Burns from flamethrowers caused agonizing wounds. Concussion from satchel charges burst eardrums and caused internal injuries without visible trauma. Japanese ration orders reflected the deteriorating situation. Ammunition allocations dropped to 1/3 of standard daily allowance by 23 February to preserve stocks for the prolonged defense. Food rations fell proportionally. Water became more precious than ammunition. The Marines measured progress in feet. Airfield No. 1 fell on 23 February after 4 days of continuous fighting. The cost, 1605 Marines killed or wounded for 3,000 feet of runway. Captured documents revealed Japanese casualties of approximately 1 to 800 dead in the same sector, a ratio that shocked American commanders. Previous Pacific campaigns had seen casualty ratios of 10 or more Japanese dead for each American loss. On Iwo Jima, the ratio approached 1 to 1. The subterranean fortifications had equalized the technological and firepower advantages that normally ensured swift American victory. Officers reviewing after-action reports coined a phrase that spread through the invasion force: "dead men who return." It was not mysticism. It was an accurate tactical description of defenders who appeared annihilated, only to emerge from tunnels hours later. The island refused to stay conquered. Every yard gained had to be held against infiltration. Every position required constant vigilance. The Marines were fighting an enemy who controlled the third dimension, not just the surface, but the volume beneath it. No precedent existed for this kind of warfare. Tactics evolved through trial, error, and blood. Battleships USS Nevada and USS New York registered salvos on Mount Suribachi throughout 21 February. 16-inch shells, each weighing more than a ton, hammered the volcanic cone. Secondary explosions suggested hits on ammunition stores. Smoke curtained the slopes. Marine assault teams from the 28th Regiment prepared to climb. The plan called for flanking attacks from east and west, converging on the summit. Flamethrower teams would clear caves, demolition squads would seal tunnels, the flag would fly by nightfall. The reality diverged from the plan. Japanese defenders occupied positions throughout the mountain's interior, a honeycomb of natural caves reinforced with timber and concrete. Every approach was covered by interlocking machine gun fire. Mortars dropped shells with devastating accuracy. Marines climbed through volcanic ash that offered no cover, exposed on slopes that channeled them into pre-sighted kill zones. Casualties mounted. Corpsmen dragged wounded downslope. The advance measured tens of meters per hour. Colonel Baron Takichi Nishi's tank crews fought from prepared positions around Suribachi's base. Type 97. Chiha tanks, their tracks removed and their hulls buried, served as armoured pillboxes. Surviving crews manned the turrets, engaging Marine Shermans with 57 2mm guns. When ammunition ran out, the tankers abandoned their vehicles and withdrew through tunnels to fight as infantry. Nishi himself commanded from a cave complex on the mountain's western face, coordinating fires and directing reserves to threatened sectors. By 23rd of February, Marines occupied Suribachi's lower slopes. The summit remained contested. A patrol from the 3rd Platoon, Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 28th Marines worked upward through shattered rock and reached the crater rim at approximately 10:20 hours. They carried an American flag. Sergeant Ernest Thomas secured the pole. The banner rose against the morning sky, a symbol visible across the entire island and to every ship offshore. Photographers captured the moment. A second, larger flag followed at 1500 hours. The image became iconic. Japanese radio log number 267, transmitted at 11:30 hours, recorded, "Suribachi silenced. Men still fight inside." Approximately 300 defenders continued resistance in the mountain's galleries, emerging at night to attack Marine positions on the summit and slopes. The flag represented a symbolic victory, not a tactical one. Suribachi's fall did not unlock the island. Kuribayashi's command post lay miles to the north beneath airfield number 2. The main defensive system, the central plateau and northern ridges, remained fully intact and fully manned. The garrison had never expected to hold Suribachi indefinitely. The mountain's purpose was to delay, to bleed, to consume time and lives. It had fulfilled that purpose. Photographers and journalists celebrated the flag raising. The image transmitted worldwide symbolized inevitable American victory. Marines on the ground understood differently. Suribachi's capture represented 4 days of fighting for a secondary position. The island's core defenses lay ahead. Officers studying terrain maps calculated distances and casualty rates. If the current ratio held, approximately 3 American casualties for every 2 Japanese deaths, the cost of securing Iwo Jima would exceed 20,000 Marines killed and wounded. The estimates proved conservative. A field telephone handset crackled in a chamber 20 meters beneath the surface. Switching boards routed calls to strong points designated by grid coordinates, not names. Map overlays divided the island into sectors, subsectors, and individual firing positions. Kuribayashi's command post controlled the network from its position near airfield number 2. Runners carried messages when telephone lines were cut. Radio operators transmitted on pre-arranged frequencies for emergencies. The system functioned despite continuous American bombardment because its nodes were dispersed, redundant, and buried beneath yards of solid rock. US intelligence summaries repeatedly listed the Japanese commander as likely KIA after 24th of February. Aerial observers noted the intensity of defensive fires and assumed such coordination required a living commander, but photographic interpreters found no evidence of a functioning headquarters. The contradiction confused American planners. They expected Japanese command posts to resemble their own, surface structures with antennas, vehicle parks, and visible activity. Kuribayashi's headquarters consisted of a series of interconnected chambers, accessible only through concealed entrances. No antennas, no vehicles, no surface signature. Communications officers maintained lines under fire to approximately 400 positions across the island. Each position received daily fire mission allocations based on remaining ammunition stocks and anticipated American movements. Kuribayashi throttled expenditure to approximately 70 rounds per gun per day, 1/3 of standard rates. Priority shifted from interdiction fires to close-range engagements. Artillery conserved shells for targets at ranges below 1,000 meters. Mortars held fire until American infantry crossed predetermined lines. Anti-tank guns waited until enemy armor approached point-blank range. The strategy inflicted steady, predictable casualties. Marines crossing open ground received no fire until they reached the killing zone, then erupted in coordinated strikes. Survivors took cover and called for supporting fires. American artillery and naval guns hammered suspected positions. Japanese defenders sheltered in tunnels waiting for the barrage to lift. When Marine infantry resumed the advance, the process repeated. Every yard cost blood. The ratio remained constant, approximately 7 Marine casualties per yard in the central sector. Kuribayashi's signal to Tokyo on the 2nd of March reported, "Every inch costs their blood." US casualty accumulation in the Central Plateau fighting had surpassed 10,000 killed and wounded, exceeding the entire garrison's original strength. Yet the defensive system continued functioning. Intact communications permitted coordinated responses. Narrow, pre-sighted kill zones converted American advances into attritional slaughter. Fire discipline conserved ammunition, extending the battle's duration indefinitely. Marine commanders adapted tactics continuously. Infantry advanced behind armor. Engineers blasted firing positions with demolitions. Flamethrowers cleared tunnels section by section. Close air support struck reverse slope positions. Naval gunfire suppressed suspected artillery. The doctrinal reforms worked, but slowly. The island refused rapid conquest. Every strongpoint required individual reduction. Every tunnel required methodical clearance. Time and blood were the currencies, and the exchange rate favoured the defenders. The commander presumed buried remained on the line, issuing orders, allocating fires, moving reserves to threatened sectors. His staff updated casualty rosters daily. Ammunition inventories tracked every shell. Water rations fell to 400 millilitres per man per day. Food stocks diminished. Medical supplies ran low. Yet the system persisted. Kuribayashi had designed a defence that could function even as its components were annihilated. The Central Plateau, honeycombed with tunnels and bristling with hidden guns, absorbed American attacks like a sponge absorbing water, slowly, bloodily, metre by metre. Demolition teams carried satchel charges forward on 9th of March. Napalm canisters stacked beside dozer-bladed paths leading to cave mouths scraped clean of camouflage. The American advance had evolved into industrial siege warfare. Tanks, flamethrowers, demolitions, and artillery worked in combination. The doctrine acquired a nickname, blowtorch and corkscrew. Burn them out, or bury them. No other method achieved reliable neutralization. US staff planners briefed a 48-hour end state for mopping up operations. The estimate proved wildly optimistic. Resistance persisted for 10 additional days. Survivor statements preserved in Japanese Defense Agency archives describe conditions inside the tunnels like a furnace. Temperatures climbed above 50 degrees Celsius, 122 Fahrenheit. Ventilation shafts collapsed under bombardment, trapping hot air and smoke. Men gasped for breath. Water rations fell to 200 millilitres per day, less than a cup. Dehydration killed as surely as bullets. Flamethrowers became the primary weapon. Tank-mounted projectors fired streams of burning fuel 150 feet into cave mouths. Portable backpack units allowed infantry to reach positions inaccessible to vehicles. Each burst consumed gallons of thickened gasoline. The fires sucked oxygen from tunnels, suffocating defenders who escaped the flames. Carbon monoxide built up in sealed chambers. Men died without visible wounds, poisoned by the combustion products of diesel fuel and napalm. Demolitions complemented fire. Satchel charges, each containing 20 pounds of composition explosive, collapsed tunnel entrances and shattered concrete reinforcements. Larger-shaped charges penetrated steel doors. Engineers measured progress by the number of apertures sealed per day. Records document hundreds of cave mouths blown shut, entombing defenders who could not retreat through blocked lateral tunnels. The island's defensive system was being dismantled one position at a time. US situation reports on 15th of March claimed 90% of known positions neutralized. Night skirmishes continued in bypassed sectors. Japanese soldiers emerged from tunnels after dark, attacked supply points and command posts, then vanished before dawn. Marine units assigned to rear areas fought defensive actions nightly. The island refused to stay secured. Even sectors declared clear-harboured survivors who slipped through the American perimeter under cover of darkness. Casualty statistics revealed the battle's unique character. A yard gained now averaged 7 Marine casualties, a ratio that recalled Tarawa's horrific attrition yet sustained under even more deliberate Japanese discipline. Previous island campaigns had featured banzai charges that exhausted Japanese strength in futile attacks. Iwo Jima saw no such waste. Kuribayashi's prohibition on mass charges remained in force. Defenders fought from prepared positions, withdrew when necessary, and reoccupied when possible. The doctrine traded Japanese lives at maximum efficiency. Medical logs documented the battle's physical toll. Corpsmen treated burns, shrapnel wounds, concussions, heat exhaustion, and psychological trauma. Blood plasma reserves ran low. Casualties exceeded the capacity of field hospitals. Hospital ships anchored offshore received a continuous stream of wounded. Surgeons operated in shifts. Burial details worked around the clock. The island's black sand, churned by shell fire and tracked by vehicles, mixed with blood into thick mud that coated everything. Heat, smoke, and suffocation became the primary mechanisms of neutralization underground. Direct kinetic effects, bullets and shell fragments, killed in the open. Below ground, the laws of physics ruled. Fire consumed oxygen, explosives created overpressure, carbon monoxide accumulated in sealed spaces. The Marines were not fighting an army. They were conducting an extermination of entrenched defenders who could not retreat and would not surrender. The process was methodical, mechanical, and merciless. Both sides understood the battle would end only when every defender was dead or captured. No middle ground existed. Bulldozers nosed into terraces cut by interlocking machine gun nests on 17th of March. Forward patrols marked Type 1 47mm anti-tank positions with engineer tape. The northern redoubt, Kitano Point, represented the garrison's final prepared defense. Natural ravines had been converted to firing pockets. Ridgelines offered reverse slope protection. Volcanic rock formations created ready-made bunkers, requiring only minimal reinforcement. American staff officers expected collapse once artillery fell silent. They were wrong. Communications lines inside the northern complex continued functioning into 23rd of March. Remnant company leaders massed approximately 3,000 men across terrain that favored defense. Artillery fire dropped. The guns were destroyed or out of ammunition, but small arms fire and grenades increased. Defenders husbanded rifle cartridges, firing single shots at exposed targets. Grenades rolled down slopes into American formations. Snipers occupied hidden positions in cliff faces. The fighting devolved to ranges measured in meters. American engineers estimated more than 1,000 fortifications per square mile in the northern sector. Redundancy by design. Destroy one position and 2 more covered the same ground. Seal one tunnel entrance and defenders emerged from another. The defensive system had been engineered for exactly this moment. Isolated, outnumbered, fighting without hope of relief or victory. The garrison fulfilled its mission by continuing to resist. Kuribayashi's last radio transmission, recorded on 22nd March, stated, "No survivors remain to deliver ammunition." Tokyo drafted the formal loss announcement. IGHQ prepared posthumous promotions. Messages of condolence were written for the garrison's families. Yet the northern redoubt continued fighting. Small arms fire greeted Marine patrols daily. Grenades detonated nightly. The island refused to acknowledge defeat even after its commander acknowledged the inevitable. Japanese tactical doctrine emphasized death over surrender. The garrison understood from the outset that evacuation was impossible. Every man accepted his fate when he landed on Iwo Jima. The northern redoubt represented not a defensive position but a tomb, a place where the garrison would die on its own terms, extracting maximum cost from the enemy. Officers maintained discipline to the end. Rations were distributed equally. Wounded received care. The defense continued not from fanaticism, but from professionalism. American casualties in the northern sector exceeded 1,500. The advance measured yards per day. Flamethrowers, demolitions, and close-range gunfire reduced positions individually. No shortcuts existed. Every cave required clearance. Every tunnel required sealing. The Marines applied lessons learned over 3 weeks of continuous combat. The process was efficient but slow. Time and blood remained the only currencies. Tokyo received the final transmission from Iwo Jima on 23rd of March. Kuribayashi's staff reported effective resistance had ceased. Communications would end. Operators destroyed codebooks and equipment. The garrison's war was over. Yet sporadic fighting continued for days. Isolated survivors defended individual caves without coordination or resupply. Some fought until killed. Others died from wounds, dehydration or starvation. A handful surrendered, approximately 216 men, from an original garrison of 21,000. The 99% casualty rate reflected the garrison's commitment and the Americans' determination. U.S. rear area posts reported movement from ravines at 0400 hours on 25 March. A Japanese detachment of approximately 300 men broke through wire into the 305th Infantry Regiment's zone near Airfield No. 2. This was no ceremonial charge. The assault was organized, coordinated, and aimed at specific targets: supply dumps, medical facilities, and command posts. The attackers moved silently through darkness, bypassing forward positions to strike the rear areas where resistance was lightest. American defenders were encircled by dawn. The Japanese detachment fought without hope or noise. Lieutenant Colonel William Hodges recorded the phrase in his after-action report. No battle cries, no wasted ammunition. Men armed with grenades, satchel charges, and bayonets infiltrated American lines and killed silently. The attack disrupted rear area operations for hours. Cooks, clerks, and staff officers found themselves in close combat. The confusion was total. Kuribayashi's body was identified days later by an inscribed sword found near the attack's origin point. Whether he personally led the final assault remains unconfirmed. Japanese survivors reported the general died in the northern caves. American records place his death near Airfield No. 2. The contradiction was never resolved. What remains certain, the garrison's command structure disintegrated on 25 March. The final organized action cost American forces approximately 100 killed and 250 wounded in a matter of hours. After-action summaries classified the assault as Iwo Jima's last coordinated resistance. With command eliminated and cave clusters isolated, further operations resembled extermination more than combat. Marines systematically sealed remaining tunnels. Demolition teams buried defenders alive. Flamethrowers incinerated survivors who refused surrender. The work was grim, methodical, and necessary. Every unsealed cave represented a potential threat. Every surviving defender could emerge to attack at night. The battle closed in radio silence, not surrender. No white flags, no formal capitulation. The garrison simply ceased to exist. Isolated survivors defended individual positions for days or weeks after organized resistance ended. Some fought until killed, others died from wounds, hunger, or thirst. A handful, 216 men, were captured alive. The garrison's 99% casualty rate exceeded every previous Pacific battle. It reflected both Japanese determination and American firepower. Kuribayashi's prohibition on futile charges had shaped the battle's character from beginning to end. The final assault, though desperate, targeted military objectives rather than seeking theatrical death. The garrison died as it fought, professionally, methodically, extracting maximum cost. American commanders recognized the distinction. Post-battle assessments praised Japanese tactical competence while condemning the waste of lives in a strategically hopeless defense. The garrison had purchased 36 days with 21,000 lives. Whether the exchange was worthwhile depended on perspective. A clerk stamped "secured" across the island operations log on 26 March 1945. Bulldozers pivoted from combat support to airfield grading. Engineers surveyed Motoyama Nostra 1 and 2 for immediate use. Seabees, the U.S. Navy's construction battalions, began extending runways while sporadic fighting continued in bypassed caves. The island was American. The cost had been unprecedented. American casualties totaled 6,121 killed and 19,217 wounded, 26,038 total. Japanese figures recorded approximately 2,703 killed and 216 captured. The ratio shocked military analysts. American forces suffered 1.25 casualties for every Japanese death, the worst exchange rate in the Pacific War. Previous campaigns had produced ratios of 5, 10 or more Japanese deaths per American loss. Iwo Jima's defenders, without armour, air support or naval gunfire, inflicted 1.5 American casualties per Japanese fatality. Division surgeons and Navy corpsmen compiled triage statistics that revealed the battle's unique character. Burn casualties from flamethrowers and napalm exceeded previous campaigns. Concussion injuries from demolitions and artillery created unprecedented numbers of traumatic brain injuries. Psychological casualties, men broken by continuous combat, filled evacuation ships. The 36-day battle had consumed entire Marine divisions. Replacement drafts arrived mid-battle to fill depleted ranks. Some units suffered 75% casualties. Japanese logistics records captured in command post tunnels documented the garrison's final weeks. Water exhaustion dates varied by sector. Southern positions ran dry by 10th of March, central sectors by 18 March, northern redoubt by 23 March. Ammunition expenditure charts showed daily allocations dropping from 200 rounds per gun in February to fewer than 20 rounds by mid-March. Food rations fell below 500 calories per man per day. Starvation level for men engaged in continuous combat. Medical supplies ran out in early March. Wounded received no anesthesia, no antibiotics, no morphine. Post-action Marine assessments called Iwo Jima the most skillfully organized defense encountered in the Pacific. The garrison had fought without air support, naval support, or hope of reinforcement. Every advantage lay with the Americans. Total air superiority, overwhelming naval gunfire, unlimited logistics, and numerical superiority approaching 3-1. Yet the defenders extracted a blood price that shocked American commanders accustomed to quick victories fueled by industrial might. The operational lesson was clear. Defense in depth with strict fire discipline could neutralize technological advantages. Tunnels defeated bombardment. Camouflage defeated reconnaissance. Fire discipline maximized ammunition effectiveness. Distributed command ensured continuity despite casualties. The garrison had transformed 8 square miles of volcanic rock into a killing ground that consumed a Marine division's worth of casualties. U.S. tactical doctrine evolved in response. Planning for Okinawa incorporated lessons from Iwo Jima. Expect prolonged resistance, prepare for tunnel warfare, allocate more flamethrowers and demolitions, anticipate casualty ratios approaching 1-1. The island was American. The method that bled it into submission would shape every subsequent battle. The Marine Corps studied Iwo Jima for decades, teaching the campaign at staff colleges as an example of prepared defense against overwhelming force. Japanese military academies, rebuilt after the war, analyzed Kuribayashi's tactics as a model for asymmetric warfare. The battle entered history not as a Japanese victory, it was unquestionably a defeat, but as a demonstration that tactical excellence could extract terrible costs even from a vastly superior enemy. Seabees measured runway extensions in April, while combat engineers cleared mines and unexploded ordnance. Pierced steel planking, temporary runway matting, gave way to asphalt on Motoyama airfields Nosmond 1 and 2. The first B-29 emergency landing occurred on 4th March, even before the island was secured. A superfortress named Dynamite, damaged during a raid on Tokyo, touched down on the partially completed runway. Crew members kissed the black sand. The island Japan had fortified to protect the home islands now served American bombers. Boituitans, bomber command logs documented 251 B-29 emergency landings on Iwo Jima between March 1945 and war's end in August. Each landing represented an aircraft and crew saved, approximately 24,000 airmen who would have died at sea or in forced landings on Japanese soil. The numbers appeared repeatedly in post-war US Air Force studies, justifying the battle's cost. Strategic bombing advocates argued that 24,000 lives saved exceeded the 6,121 Marines killed. Critics countered that the blockade and bombing campaign would have succeeded without Iwo Jima. The debate continued for decades. P-51 Mustang escort missions began in April. Long-range fighters sorted from Iwo Jima to cover B-29 streams attacking Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, and other urban targets. Bomber losses dropped significantly. Crews reported increased confidence knowing friendly fighters patrolled their routes, and a safe landing field existed midway to Japan. The strategic air campaign intensified through spring and summer 1945. Incendiary raids burned Japanese cities. Industrial production collapsed. The home islands faced starvation and invasion. A 1946 Japanese General Staff report, compiled by surviving officers during the American occupation, analyzed Iwo Jima's defense. The conclusion was precise. Defense fulfilled its duty in honor, if not in result. The garrison had delayed American forces for 36 days. It had inflicted unprecedented casualties. It had demonstrated that prepared positions and disciplined troops could exact a terrible price from technologically superior enemies. Whether the sacrifice achieved strategic value remained ambiguous. Japan lost the war. The home islands were occupied. The industrial cities were destroyed. Iwo Jima's defense changed nothing strategically. Tactically, it changed everything. The island's capture closed the air gap to Japan. B-29s flying from the Marianas no longer faced the 3,000-mile round trip without fighter escort or emergency landing options. The strategic bombing campaign's reliability stiffened. Tactical innovations developed on Iwo Jima, flamethrowers, demolitions, combined arms coordination, became standard doctrine. The Marine Corps preserved institutional memory through after-action reports, training manuals, and veterans' accounts. The battle entered the service's mythology as the bloodiest in its history. The ground that consumed thousands became an air bridge that preserved thousands more. Whether the exchange was justified depended on perspective, politics, and counterfactual speculation. What remained certain: 6,821 Marines died to capture an island that Japan defended with 21,000 men who expected no relief and accepted no surrender. Both sides fought with courage, skill, and determination. Both sides suffered. History recorded the outcome but struggled to judge the cost. Post-war publications printed Kuribayashi's letters in Japan during the late 1940s. His correspondence to his wife revealed a man who understood his mission's futility, yet accepted it with stoic professionalism. One letter, written in January 1945, stated, "Do not expect my return. The situation here permits no hope." Another emphasized his tactical philosophy. "We shall not waste lives in meaningless charges. Every man must kill 10 Americans before he dies." The letters circulated among bereaved families and military historians. They presented a portrait at odds with Western stereotypes of fanatical Japanese commanders. Wartime Japanese culture prized sacrificial attack and theatrical death. Banzai charges epitomized the warrior spirit, Bushido, that dominated military thinking. Kuribayashi rejected that tradition in favor of cold mathematics. His defense of Iwo Jima elevated discipline and method over spectacle. The garrison died slowly, inflicting maximum casualties per man lost. Post-war Japanese military analysts studied the battle as a case study in rational defense against superior force. Tactical competence, they concluded, had been separated from strategic futility. Bereaved families gathered at Chidorigafuchi National Cemetery in Tokyo annually to honor unrepatriated war dead. Iwo Jima's fallen numbered in the thousands. American authorities returned some remains during the 1950s and 1960s, but many bodies remained entombed in sealed tunnels beneath the island. Japanese delegations visited Iwo Jima periodically, conducting recovery operations when U.S. military authorities permitted access. The work continued into the 21st century. Every recovered body represented closure for a family that had waited decades. Military academies worldwide incorporated Iwo Jima into curriculum. The U.S. Marine Corps Command and Staff College taught the campaign as an example of amphibious assault against prepared defenses. Students analyzed American tactical adaptations, logistics, and combined arms coordination. Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force schools studied the battle from the defender's perspective, examining tunnel construction, fire discipline, and distributed command. Israeli, British, and other nations' officers studied Iwo Jima as a model of asymmetric defense. Modern ground surveys using penetrating radar confirmed sealed tunnel sections across the central and northern sectors. Estimates suggested 30 to 40% of the original tunnel network remained intact, inaccessible due to collapsed entrances or deliberate sealing by American engineers. The tunnels contained artifacts, equipment, and human remains. Japanese recovery teams requested access repeatedly. Negotiations between American and Japanese authorities continued. The island, administered by the United States under military jurisdiction, permitted limited civilian access. The battle influenced both U.S. assault doctrine and Japanese remembrance, separating tactical excellence from strategic outcome. Kuribayashi's defense demonstrated that technological inferiority need not result in rapid collapse if defenders employed terrain, engineering, and fire discipline intelligently. American planners learned that industrial superiority did not guarantee low-cost victories. Both lessons shaped Cold War military thinking as superpowers contemplated conflicts against prepared, determined adversaries. Iwo Jima entered collective memory differently in each nation. Americans remembered the flag raising on Mount Suribachi, an image symbolizing inevitable victory in Marine Corps valor. Japanese remembered Kuribayashi's letters and the garrison's disciplined resistance, symbols of duty fulfilled against impossible odds. Both narratives contained truth, both omitted complexity. The battle was neither simple victory nor noble defeat. It was industrial siege warfare applied to 8 square miles of volcanic rock, killing 27,000 men over 36 days. Iwo Jima fell in 36 days. Its defense reshaped how the Pacific War's final battles were fought and remembered.